I did bring this up in my property class, and what you just talked about brought it up to me again, is I'm wondering why with this affirmative duty to affirmatively furthering
fair housing. Yeah, it's not the easiest phrase in the world.
Okay, I learned, so you say Chicago, but I think Cook County, right?
Right.
I learned that there are requirements for affordable housing, for a certain number of multi-family housing units to be in every single municipality in the county. And my question was, then why do we have these North Shore neighborhoods that have absolutely none of that? Zero. And I won't name them, but I'm sure you know where they are. They are, I mean, there's a ton of money, very, very low minority populations, and no multifamily housing or affordable housing whatsoever. How does that continue, given that we actually do have laws here in Illinois that say that municipalities can't do that?
Yeah, I'll stress, and then I'll let the others chime in on that. We do have laws that address that, and Illinois does have an inclusionary zoning a law. It isn't perfect, but it could get us moving. I think again is the political will to enforce it, and that just has really not been present. And one of the big problems nationwide when you're talking about affordable housing and requirements that developers provide units for low income or particularly affordable housing is frequently they can transfer those credits to other housing, and so it is not done equally. And probably the original idea of inclusive zoning was in New Jersey in the Mount Laurel decision way back in the 1970s that many of us know about. And the struggle that has been going on in New Jersey ever since then as to how you implement this has not really been a 100% a success. So. As I said, it was unfortunately at the very end of the Obama administration that they finally put together that HUD rule requiring a documentation of how communities are affirmatively furthering fair housing, a plan, and then the ideal was that people would be judged according to whatever plan that they put into effect. That has now been suspended. Hasn't been eliminated, but suspended by the Trump administration. So you run into just an awful lot of resistance, and I think this is one area where you have laws on the books, but they only take us so far.
Housing is not my area specifically, but in some of the work that I did, one of the things we talked about even within Chicago is some of the requirements to build affordable housing and the pushback you see in communities. Right. I think it's Jefferson Park in particular, the aldermen there have put forward a proposal for affordable housing, and many community members pushed back. But what was interesting is this idea that affordable housing and the dog whistle that was for race. And so you saw in the signs and in the images, we don't want another Cabrini here. We don't want, gangs here, and the ways in which those things are racialized. And so no one's talking about race, but that's exactly the conversation that's happening. It's that racial anxiety, that racial tension that is being inserted into the conversation, and the ways in which that prevents us from doing this work. And so affordable means affordable. But the challenge and the pushback is absolutely sort of calling on racialized tensions and using that to drive some of the political opposition that we see. And so being able to call that out, to name that was absolutely present in the work that we did with National Teachers Academy. We heard it over and over again. There are no schools for our kids to go to. The other schools are full of gangs. Even if people admittedly had never been to those schools, right? Had never seen and walked inside of those schools, and the ways in which those prevent actual and real barriers despite what any law says, that's part of our struggle. So we have both the work to do on the legal side, but we also have the work to do as a society and a culture to really name and bring people along in this work.
Based on the impact standard, the Shriver Center now is challenging the kind of aldermanic privilege here in Chicago, where aldermen can stop a project within their ward. And again, either the intent or the impact of that has been generally to perpetuate segregation and to prevent a lot of the diversity that we have here. Another big problem in the housing area is the housing vouchers. And of course, you'll note the Fair Housing Act does not have wealth as a category. So discriminating against poor people or discriminating on the basis of wealth, of course, is the American ideal, I guess. And there is no fundamental right to housing. The Supreme Court has said that under the Constitution. Congress, in setting up the housing voucher program, specifically said that landlords do not have to take vouchers, and the courts have generally held that there is no federal prohibition against discrimination when landlords turn people down because they hold housing vouchers. Now, one of the ways to get around that, many housing voucher holders are of color, people with disabilities. So again, the impact argument can be made there that refusing to take housing vouchers has a discriminatory effect. Some of those cases are being brought now. Prior to inclusive communities, they were not terribly successful. Now again, talking about the difference between law and reality, in Chicago, as you know, for at least I think the last 15 years, we've had a source of income ordinance that prohibits discrimination on the basis of source of income, and that's been interpreted by the courts to prohibit discrimination against housing voucher holders. About 5 years ago, Cook County enacted that, so it's in effect in the county. If you go out and have a housing voucher and apply for housing, I would say the chances are 9 out of 10 that the landlord is going to say, I don't accept housing vouchers. And that's illegal, but it's going on. Actions are brought on that, but many people don't complain. So again, we have the laws, and it would be nicer if they were federal, I suppose in this instance, than simply city or county, but we do have that. But again, enforcement and the whole culture of cultural environment, I think, impacts these laws.
Mm-hmm.